Picking up the pieces, Trinidad and Tobago bounces back after a brush with Brett. Weekend Business Report starts right now. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Kenil Gale. Trinidad and Tobago was lashed with heavy rains and high winds this week as Tropical Storm Brett wreaked havoc on the islands. We're linking with the Twin Island Republic in a few minutes, but right now here's Andrew Laidley with your first WBR News Roundup. Andrew.
Thanks, Kenil. Jobs, jobs, and more jobs. That's the recurring theme at the reopening of the Alpart plant in Nain St. Elizabeth by the Chinese-owned Jiquan Iron and Steel Company, JISCO. More in this report.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness says Jamaicans up to 2 parishes away from St. Elizabeth will reap immediate benefits from the reopening of the bauxite plant.
It is a good day for Jamaica, don't you think? This is a good day. It is a good day for St. Elizabeth and Manchester. I would even go as far as Clarendon. It is a better day for the people of Nain.
Mining Minister Mike Henry says Jamaicans who operate businesses in the region are already reporting increases in sales of products and services.
The positive impact of JISCO reopening is being felt in the economies of Elizabeth and Manchester. The hotels and guest houses are full and reporting increased occupancy rates. The shops, the wholesalers, the bars, the farm stores, the supermarkets, and the various other establishments are reporting increased business. This, ladies and gentlemen, is just the beginning of prosperity.
Mining Minister Mike Henry says Jamaicans who operate businesses in the region are already reporting increases in sales of products and services.
As we speak, the National Minerals Policy is in the final drafting stage and will be presented to Cabinet shortly, because I was shocked to find that we did not have a national minerals policy after some 60 years of a mining industry.
In the meantime, Prime Minister Holness says he's committed to working with JISCO to maximize job opportunities for Jamaicans.
The government is committed to working with Alpart to give persons the opportunity for progress and prosperity that comes through being productive.
In an effort to reduce concerns surrounding the new foreign exchange auction system, Bank of Jamaica BOJ Governor Brian Winter is seeking to explain to stakeholders how the new mechanism will work. The details in this report. Governor Winter clarified that in upcoming weeks, the BOJ will set and disclose the volumes it will sell under its new forex auction system.
We're not, just to be clear, I want to confirm, what we are going to be announcing and setting for 1 day a week for the following 4 weeks will be the amount that we're going to sell. Okay? Because the price will come out of the bids made by the market to us, and then people will be competing for this.
He says the entire process will be transparent and will be similar to the Treasury bill auction.
So we will sell, and the process of bidding and the result will give us a result, and we will have sold the amount. If it's oversubscribed or if it's undersubscribed, we'll have an announcement right after, within about half an hour or an hour or so of the auction closing. Then the result will be there. Think like the Treasury bill auction. It'll be kind of exactly like that, actually.
Governor Winter says the pre-announcement plan will allow stakeholders the ability to know more about how they buy, which is a luxury they did not have under the previous mechanism.
A routine thing that, you will want to know what the result of the auction is, and then you'll analyze it, right? And then you'll wait for the next auction.
Tourism Minister Ed Bartlett says Jamaica is ready to be a significant player in the gaming industry. He says the success of that will also benefit the tourism sector. Anthony Morgan reports. Ed Bartlett says Jamaica hosting the annual Caribbean Gaming Show and Summit represents a significant development for stakeholders in the tourism sector.
What this is telling us is that Jamaica is being viewed as an important and interesting new market in the region's gaming industry. As Minister of Tourism, I can tell you firsthand, and I'm sure Minister Shaw will expand on this later on, I'm interfering in his business for a second, that not only are we pleased with this ringing endorsement, but we are confident that the exhaustive market analysis and evaluation you have done are well-founded, as Jamaica is indeed ready to be a significant player in the gaming industry.
The minister adds that the gaming industry will be vital to the island's tourism product once it is properly regulated.
This two-day gathering will also provide the opportunity to look at and study different proposals and ideas surrounding gaming, as well as being able to look at what's going on in the world around us, assess what's happening in our jurisdiction, and appreciate that we now have an opportunity to seriously get in the game as an important part of this global phenomenon.
In the meantime, the tourism minister says the island will have to be competitive as more countries are venturing into the gaming sector.
When we look at successful gaming jurisdictions around the world and the positive impact the industry has had on tourism, we can truly salivate at the potential and prospects of our own homegrown products.
I'll have more news later. Camille, back to you.
Thanks a lot, Andrew. Major flooding across Trinidad and Tobago displaced several residents and caused millions of dollars in damages. The Twin Island Republic is slowly getting back to normal, and joining me now to give us an update is Ian Wason. Ian is a journalist with CTV in Trinidad and Tobago. Ian, thanks so much for joining us here on Weekend Business Report. How are you doing?
I'm okay, man. I'm okay, thanks.
Great. Can you tell us what's the latest with the situation on the ground in the aftermath of Tropical Storm Brett?
Still cleaning up operations taking place, more so in areas that are flood prone. The areas that are surrounding the Caroni River and surrounding other trees in the Caroni River, and of course, South Trinidad as you know that the storm passed more on the southern side. The southern side didn't get it as hard as the south. So there are a lot of areas in the south that have been flooded, and some houses lose their roof. The damages that took place in the southern towns like Penal and Barrow and Maruga. The Prime Minister went there yesterday in the southern part of Trinidad, and we saw a lot of flood and a lot of damage that he intends to see about.
Now, overall, how prepared was the island for the storm?
Of course, the different regional corporations that has jurisdiction in different parts of Trinidad, they for the different degrees of damage. For instance, I went to Urupoon Gardens on Tuesday, and it was really bad because, yes, they have some retention ponds. There are some retention ponds and some pumps that would channel the water, and that is supposed to avoid flooding in the community. But what happened is because of the garbage and the debris that came with the waters, it caused the flood, the pumps to malfunction. And of course, that caused the flooding in the whole community, the whole area. A lot of people lose everything in their homes. People lose their fridges, their stores, people lose their dining sets, their living room sets, and everything. Some people lost because of the flooding.
In terms of picking up the pieces, what type of assistance, if any, is the government giving to those people affected?
The government is assisting the ones that are affordable in terms of the regional corporations. They are assisting people with housing. I went to one home yesterday where the land shifted and the whole house that was on the land, the house went back. It was really bad. The member of parliament for that area, we went to that home, and the government assisted in organizing the clearance for that person in another location until they can rebuild. They are helping. There are a lot of different examples where the government in bought stuffs and even offering to help rebuild. And even while that their homes are being rebuilt, they will pay rent for another location in the meantime.
Is there any emphasis being placed on reaching out for help outside of the country? Is the government calling for international aid or anything like that?
Well, I have not heard anything about appealing for help outside of Trinidad yet, but everything so far is being taken care of internally. I've not heard anything, haven't heard anything today yet about anything about asking for help outside.
Finally, Ian, there's more rain expected this weekend. How are Trinidadians preparing for this?
Well, because the earth is already saturated with with the rain, and even before the storm, we had some days of rain before, so that would have hastened the flooding. Now, with more rain coming, it indeed residents will be concerned about it because up to yesterday, the Caroni River was higher than usual, and any rain again, um, because in Trinidad and Tobago could burst its bank again. So they are looking at that. They are concerned about the rain that is due to come because the rivers haven't gone down yet.
Ian Wason, thank you so much for joining us here on Weekend Business Report. We really appreciate it.
All the best.
Thanks again, Ian. Jason Wu Young tells us what's happening in company news after the break. Then later, herders and camels driven out of Saudi Arabia as the diplomatic spat with Qatar intensifies. More WBR after this break. Welcome back to Weekend Business Report. Here is Jason Wu Young with this week's company news.
CEO of Kingston Wharves Limited, Grantley Stevenson, says the company is poised for more growth after entering the logistics business last year. He says expansion plans are already underway, with more coming soon. Mr. Stevenson says the company's expansion includes modernizing the facility. The company is also expected to take advantage of the recent Special Economic Zone (SEZ) legislation. 2016 was a good year for the Jamaica Producers JP Group, as the company raked in earnings of $4.8 billion, a four-fold increase over the corresponding period a year before. Managing Director of Jamaica Producers Group Jeffrey Hall says the company plans to grow even more, but that growth will not come without the required investment. That's why he says the JP Group is making significant and strategic investments in many areas. Berger Paints companies in Barbados, Jamaica and Trinidad will be in new hands by the third quarter of this year. Trinidad and Tobago conglomerate Ansa McCall Limited has signed an agreement to fully acquire Lewis Berger Limited, which wholly owns Berger Paint Barbados Limited and has 51% of Berger Paints Jamaica Limited and 70% of Berger Paints Trinidad Limited. Ansa McCall will pay cash for the company through its subsidiary Ansa Coatings International. But company officials have not disclosed the cost of the transaction. According to a release from the company, the combined Berger Caribbean business has estimated net sales of $35 million. Berger Paints Jamaica Limited remains the largest paint manufacturing entity in the English-speaking Caribbean, with 95% of the company's products manufactured locally.
Thanks a lot, Jason. Let's now take a look at the numbers from the major stock markets around the world. Andrew Laidley comes back after the break with more news, so stay with us. Welcome back to Weekend Business Report. Here is Andrew Laidley with more of the top business news stories BATV covered this week. Andrew.
Thanks again, Kenil. Ambassador Dr. Nigel Clark says Jamaica has a dependency issue which has caused the country to be viewed as an underdog for many years. But he says with discipline and strategy, that can change. Here's more. It's time to depend on ourselves. That's the word coming from Ambassador Nigel Clark, who believes an over-reliance on foreign help has contributed to slowing down Jamaica's growth rate.
We have to be in a place at the end of this program, or the one that follows it. I'm making no pronouncements on what happens at the end of this. We have to get to a place at some point where we have enough reserves that we are truly independent. But somehow there's a psychology of dependency where we are comfortable with depending on others.
He says Jamaica needs to engender a fiscal policy strategy where the country has sufficient reserves for emergencies.
The kinds of actions that would lead us to be in a position that any hurricane come, any breeze blow, we are fine because we have the resources to pay our bills. The kind of action that are required to get us there.
He says until Jamaica is at a place of economic independence, the country will remain at the mercy of larger, more developed countries.
We want to be in a position where we can chart our own direction as a people and as a country, responding to our own opportunities and challenges, free from having to take the strong advice of the industrialized countries of the world. We can do it. It is within our grasp.
Minister of Finance and the Public Service Audley Shaw says divesting Caymanas Track Limited has allowed well-needed investments to flow into the sector. He says there are also plans to turn Jamaica into a training hub for the industry. Amita Prasad Webb reports.
Finance Minister Audley Shaw says since Supreme Ventures took over the operations of Caymanas Track a few months ago, the payout time has been significantly reduced.
The payout to the industry, I don't know all the details and the jargon, but the payout to the industry, which usually would be as long as 3 weeks to a month for the Caymanas Track to pay their dues out to the people who the racehorse people. It's now not 3 weeks to a month anymore. It is now 1 week.
The finance minister says Supreme Ventures is looking to expand racing operations into the diaspora.
A plan not just to expand the local industry, but for Caymanas Track to reach out into the diaspora. So we have simulcast, so that when we have racing at Caymanas, the Jamaican diaspora in Miami, in Atlanta, in Toronto, in New York, in London, in real time, we'll be watching the races and we'll be betting. And guess what? Earning more revenue. And guess what? The government earns more revenue as well.
Minister Shaw adds that there are plans to turn the island into a training hub for horse racing.
Sustaining and advancing such an industry means capitalizing, have it properly capitalized, and providing the tools and synergies necessary for it to grow. Divesting CTL has allowed well-needed investments to flow into the sector to drive these initiatives. And the Racing Commission will also be improving its training capacity to boost its certification courses in horse racing. I am prepared as Minister of Finance to provide appropriate waivers so that we can import more horses to improve the stock of, for the industry. Duty-free importation, because this thing is going to be bigger and better.
Chairman of the Factories Corporation of Jamaica, Littleton, Tanny Shirley, is pitching the plans to stakeholders for the transformation of the old Goodyear factory to the Morant Bay Urban Center. He says the center is expected to be completed in the next 2 years. The FCJ chairman made the presentation a few days ago, and BATV News was there. Here's Anthony Morgan with more on that report. Factories Corporation of Jamaica FCJ chairman Littleton Tani Shirley says it took his team some 6 months to formalize the concept of transforming the old Goodyear factory into the Morant Bay Urban Center.
Consistent working day and night, long hours, because we were pushed and pressed by the Prime Minister to make it happen. It also was running concurrently with our Nagahead development, which is on the table as another major project for BPOs. And we feel confident the rebranding of FCJ, the things that we want to do to ensure Jamaica becomes an investment climate for people.
Mr. Shirley adds that there has been much interest in the financing since the ideas came to light.
What I can say to you, never before I've seen such major interest from financial institutions and private sector business for this development. I can assure it's going to be the new hotspot of Jamaica. It's going to be the new Kingston. It's possible going to involve all the things that we have spoken about, not only in terms of the new urban center, but how we build out the old town as a heritage town.
Meanwhile, Member of Parliament for Eastern St. Thomas, Dr. Fenton Ferguson, says although his team will need more time to digest it all, it is an impressive concept.
The broad concepts there are fantastic in terms of the vision, what you're expecting. You know, anyone looking at it and looking at it against the history of St. Thomas, this would represent one of the biggest investment. And at the same time, looking at resolving age-old problems and issues that we have faced.
And the MP for Western St. Thomas, James Robertson, says the project represents hope for the parish. But he says there still needs to be a discussion on the way forward.
You said 365,000 square feet. I mean, I didn't even realize that was the scope. That's massive when the Goodyear is only 130. 50, 60 years ago, 130,000 square feet sounded big and was big. Today, it is small in terms of the requirement for service.
He says ground is expected to be broken by the end of the year, and the project is expected to be completed 2 years after that. That's all the news roundup this week. So, Keneal, it's back to you.
When we come back, out in the cold, camels are the latest casualties of a bitter Middle East dispute. Weekend Business Report continues after this break. Welcome back to Weekend Business Report. A rescue mission is underway in Qatar after thousands of camels were expelled from Saudi Arabia due to the ongoing blockade. Supplies of feedstock and water have been rushed to the border as camel owners say some animals have died and others are distressed and injured. Al Jazeera's Tony Bertley reports on how the expulsion will not only hit Qatari camel owners financially, but also Saudis.
In the desert wilderness of southwestern Qatar, these are some of the latest camels to be herded out of Saudi Arabia. They represent the fallout from the diplomatic crisis in the Gulf. 9,000 camels expelled in just 36 hours. Owners and herders were given a window of just 1 hour to move. This calf cries out for its mother, which has been lost during the crossing.
It was hard. The camel were exhausted because they didn't know which way to go. Many died, and many had broken legs and injuries, and some of the camels are lost. Some of the cows need their mother's milk, and they may die. Some of the camels were worth 200,000 Qatari riyals, and we lost that.
Tribesmen and Bedouins have herded their camels here for generations, but even with a border they were able to cross freely. More than 20,000 Qataris own camels, and most were kept in neighbouring Saudi, which has an abundance of land. Camels represent big business. They produce milk, meat, and are used for camel racing and even beauty competitions.
My camel is in Saudi Arabia now. I cannot go and take care of my camel and brought it here. This is not allowed. So I need to call some people I know in Saudis to take care of my camel to bring him to the border. And it is also costing a lot of money because these people will not work for free.
An average camel can cost around $3,000. A prized racing camel can fetch 20 times that.
The Qataris say their camels were worth around $3 billion a year to Saudi Arabia in terms of feed and services. That money will now go into the Qatar economy. But this crisis is not just about money, it's also about long-standing tradition and about families.
Families find themselves on different sides of borders, unable to cross.
The big impact now it's on the families, on the relationship. Imagine my uncle now, he's in Saudi Arabia. I cannot see him. My brother, he's in UAE. So imagine I cannot go to my brother, I cannot go to my uncle because of this blockage. And the blockage was very harsh on the people.
It's estimated that there are another 150,000 Qatari camels in Saudi Arabia. There is no indication when or if they will be allowed to cross the border. This is costing both the Saudis and Qataris money, but it's also costing the once long-standing friendship of ordinary people.
For us it hurts a lot. I think it will take a long time. We will not forget this forever. We don't hate any people, but they treat us like enemies.
Governments may one day forgive and forget out of necessity. For the camel owners and herders of Qatar, that's not an option. They say they will never be beholden to Saudis again. Tony Bertley, Al Jazeera, on the Saudi-Qatar border.
And that's all the time we have for this week's show. On behalf of the entire Weekend Business Report team, I'm Keneal. See you next time.